There is a natural, healthy ebb and flow to all things in life, and that includes mergers and acquisitions activity within the supplement industry. So, while we're still in one of those ebbs, the tides seem to be changing. I'm going to let you in on a not so little secret within the supplement industry. Supplement brands are competing for every dollar from consumers who have a heightened sensitivity to costs. But the supplement consumer has proved once again that it's highly resilient. And while the level of investment funding and quantity of M&A transactions are down this year compared to the previous few years, things have fared relatively well for the supplement industry. The markets are right sizing, lofty valuations are getting washed out of the system, and companies are getting used to higher interest rates. Combine that with the significant capital now sidelined on the private equity side and stockpiles of cash at strategics waiting for deployment, and I believe things could be improving on the finance deal side of the supplement industry in the near term future. Does that mean everything is heading back to the dozen or so years of Goldilocks between the Great Recession and the Great Shutdown? No. Investors have gotten more careful and there's less FOMO. Money isn't free anymore, and I don't believe it will get any significantly cheaper anytime soon, as the Federal Reserve will face challenges stemming from wage inflation battles within the labor movement 2.0. So, investors must recalibrate, but deals will indeed keep getting done. Though I believe the supplement industry investment theme over the next few years will be coined getting back to the basics. And that phrase can obviously mean many things to many different people, but I'm thinking about it through a synergistic lens. Let's look at a trio of supplement industry deals that were just announced in the last few weeks. The first one was between Nutra Holdings and Nested Naturals. For those unfamiliar with the portfolio company Nutra Holdings, they are a longtime client of mine that owns one of the largest Amazon focused sports nutrition brands called Jack Factory and the direct to consumer all natural sports nutrition brand Transparent Labs. While both brands already contain a collection of wellness oriented products, Nutra Holdings is still heavily weighted on performance nutrition subcategories. So, Nested Naturals provided a perfect opportunity for categorical diversification, but with sales channel familiarity, as Nested Naturals is also an Amazon focused brand. The second M&A transaction was between Thorne HealthTech and the global private equity firm L Catterton. I've already went into a lot of depth on this transaction through a piece of content about a week ago that I posted, but just to echo some thoughts I shared at the end, L Catterton is a great partner to fuel Thorne's long-term growth aspirations of being a major player within the next era of health, one that will certainly be data-driven and wellness-centric with a guiding focus on preventative care that extends the health span of each individual. And then the final recent kind of back to basics synergistic supplement industry deal I wanted to kind of bring to your attention is between another longtime client of mine, Avi, and the coffee brand Coffee Over Cardio. But instead of me just kind of babbling on about this M&A transaction, I asked my good friend Ronak Shah, who just so happens to also be the co-founder and CEO of OBVI, to join me for a quick chat on camera. In the following conversation, we run through the backstory of how this deal materialized, the investment thesis, and what's next on the deal horizon for OBVI. I guess I'll start off with saying congrats on the acquisition.
Thank you so much, Josh. And of course, as always a pleasure to talk to you. And thanks for making a platform for all of us to just come and chat. You know, they always say like, it's good things come when you're not looking.
Yeah.
And we really weren't. And I think this came out of a opportunity that's like, wow, this could really work. And then you start to like learn how to acquire a business and what it means. And like, it was kind of like we had to learn and act very quickly. So it was fun journey.
Was there any kind of interesting backstory? Like, how did the deal materialize?
Yeah. Actually, really cool backstory. All right. So first of all, the owner of Coffee Over Cardio used to work with me at Shreds 10
Okay.
years ago. So 2013, 2014, we worked at Shreds. And, at that point, one of the faster growing supplement brands had a a colossal fall, but was one of the best learning journeys I've ever been on. He was managing their social media at that time. We stayed very close. Like the shreds class of people. Like if you were in that 2013, 2014 class of shreds, everyone has their own businesses, right? You have a company like Noob Drinks, or you have Rise, which is Nick Stella was an ex
Yeah.
Shreds. You have Mike Krausen, who started Coffee with Cardio. I started OBVI. You have multiple brands out there, right? So we all kind of are like in this like alumni like chat and like remain close and like kind of still have that friendship. So Mike Krausen, he and his now ex-wife, they started Coffee Over Cardio, and it ran it up to 10 million in sales and did really well with it. Unfortunately, their marriage didn't work out, and they split the business, and he got to keep the business. And it got to a point where he was just running a business and not passionate about it anymore. So he kind of it was kind of around like I think it was like March or April. He's like, hey, listen, like I'm like kind of over this. I'm doing my other things and working on other things. Do you guys want to possibly help me out with this? And at this point, like we've been very true about we're not going to help out businesses because we left an agency model before we started OBVI because we didn't believe in it anymore. So we kind of declined and we're like, no, we don't have the capacity to help. And then I think it was like June came back or July, and he was like, I'm over this. I'm done with this. I'm ready to part ways. I want it to end up in good hands. So why don't you just kind of cover my inventory costs? And I'm happy to just, get a small percentage to be kept in goodwill. And we were like, really? And he was just like, I just know you guys are gonna run with this really, really well. And I just want to see its glory days kind of come back alive for it. So we're like, yeah, I mean, this sounds really cool now. But then you don't think about like, wait, you're literally about to acquire a company. You just are like hyped about the idea of it. You know what I mean? And I think that's when it was like, holy shit.
Yeah. Yeah, hypothetically you're like, oh man, you see the vision for it, you're like, I could put all these pieces
Oh
together,
yeah,
and
yeah,
then it
yeah,
happens and you're like, wait a minute, now I have to
yep.
actually like execute on all this while I'm also doing obby, while I'm also doing this pet brand, I think. And then you were just talking about like how big like the podcast has even gotten. It's like you have so many irons in the fire, all of a sudden you're like, okay, now I actually have to like make all this happen.
Oh my God, yeah, that was that moment of I feel like I'm really jealous of the people who do this like constantly because like that moment when you realize, holy shit, this is like a company that we're taking over now, to like actually going through the diligence, understanding integrations and how this is going to fit into your ecosystem, that is a whole different world of learning. Like, there's no way we even did this correctly 100%. Like, there's so many, like, we just realized, like, forgot to transfer over the PayPal. Like, little thing, like just stuff that you're like, damn, like, there's so many little pieces. Um, but it's a whole new world of learning. But we've successfully did the transfer of assets, and it is our company. And it feels weird to say that too sometimes, but yeah, it's been an exciting couple weeks of it now.
Yeah, I think the good thing is that it obviously comes from a friendly transaction. If it was somebody that you guys had no connection to whatsoever, you guys said whatever, it's like you skip some of those steps or you kind of learn through it. You wouldn't be able to kind of, hey, text the guy up like, hey, we forgot this or whatever. But like you could kind of like work through it, and then everything going forward, if you were to make other transactions, you would know, okay, we need to check all these couple other boxes that we forgot to. So it's kind of a good one to kind of learn through. But I'm also thinking about when I saw you announce that, instantly I'm like, okay, that's a great kind of bolt-on complementary business, because I think anybody that knows collagen supplements knows that a lot of the usage is in coffee. It's just a natural kind of thing, is like people put their collagen in their morning coffee. So now that you have this coffee brand, it's like you have both parts of the typical, I guess, use occasion.
Yep, that's you nailed it. I think there's two parts to this, right? So One is like when you look at our current consumer base for OBVI, exactly what you described is kind of what triggered our mind almost instantly. And maybe we didn't even like talk about it. It's just like we knew, right? Because that is literally how our consumer behaves. And then the second part was like, I think the reverse angle too. Like there is a set of their customers that like also are taking this product, but maybe don't know the add-on effect of
Mm.
what something like a collagen can do. So I think we've always looked at it like, well, how can this help Obvi? I think post acquisition is when we realize, wait, how can Obvi help this brand as well? And I think that was kind of really cool to get that second perspective because we've never looked at it from both sides of it. But yeah, you're spot on. It just it's such a natural integration.
Yeah, I think the extra benefit for those that maybe are not too aware of your business is that you have this really great community that you get to see the primarily women, like how are they utilizing the product? They're very, I guess, forthcoming in which they show their usage. They ask a lot of questions. They're very kind of helpful in that community. And that allows you to see how they're actually using the product. I think what
Exactly.
a little bit of the mix up that happens sometimes with consumer packaged goods is that, you have a suggested usage or you imagine in your head how a product's going to be used. And then there's never any, I guess, behavioral data or anything that's actual. How are they using it? Where I think the community, you guys know exactly how people are using it. So you can say, hey, the majority of our consumers are actually putting this in coffee. And man,
Yep.
that actually is a great acquisition.
Yeah, that's exactly it. I think when we look at the community, knowing that milk is one of the first top mixes, but then coffee is a close second. I think one thing we always said at Obvi too was like we want to replace everything that's in someone's shelf, right? And so in their cabinet, and it comes down to even what they mix this with. So like obviously we're not going to get into dairy, so we're not going to come out with milk. But if we can come out with coffee, now we're replacing that Folgers coffee in their cabinet, but not necessarily by um, creating saturation through our brand by like, hey, drink Obvi coffee. Rather, coming through at this with like a sister angle, which I think is what I'm like super excited about.
And I think the other kind of element to this is that both brands are very much kind of like taste forward and creative and fun with the way that they approach the flavoring. I think that
Yeah.
like I'm not a coffee drinker. I think you know that we've hung out enough that
Yep.
you know that. But I've always appreciated when coffee over cardio came out. They took that spin, that angle of like let's make this coffee fun, which I think differentiates it away from, like you said, it's a Folgers or whatever. So now you have two of these brands that have the same kind of ethos, and then what can you do with it? It's like seems like it could be a pretty fun integration.
Yeah. It's we I don't think we've ever announced this. Let me try and think. Am I gonna get in trouble? Okay, I'm gonna announce it here first. Um, we also have two licensing deals. One which is known to public, which is Dippin' Dots, and we're super super excited about that one. Um, but the second one is we're the official licensee with Post. So
Wow.
we have Fruity Pebbles coming out. And I think that also set us off where we were like, damn, our best selling collagen is still fruity cereal. And I think part of us are like just being in the ecosystem of Post, Warner Brothers, like this is kind of like where this is the domain we want to be in. Not that we think that like we'll be able to carry it over to Ob because we can't because of obviously Dymatize, etc. But
Yeah.
I think being in that environment and ecosystem is going to play well for us. So we're super excited about that part as well. Going back to your flavor piece, where if we look at coffee, no one's really surprised by flavored coffee, but you add this like licensing angle and go a little bit more official flavored. I think it's going to be pretty fun and exciting.
Yeah, I think it's like you said. I mean, it's not a huge leap. It's not like you're reinventing something, but I think it's unique enough and new enough, but it's also familiar that people are going to
Yes.
be willing to kind of try it out, which I think is really that golden space within CPG. Is like, you don't want to be too new and unique that like you have to be educating people. But I think in this case, you're ultimately going to get people to be like, that's very interesting. I would love my bitter coffee to taste much better. And because of that, I'm going to give this a shot. You know what I mean? And that's me hating on, again, on coffee. Cause I just feel like I'm
Yep.
probably like have some genetic tongue thing that like the bitterness I don't like, but,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know, that's,
Yeah, another really interesting fact about this company is their sales are split between coffee and hydration.
hmm,
And I same reaction. Like when I looked at the Shopify the first day, I was like, huh, like interesting. Why? And then instantly started looking at like consumer feedback and like the surveying that they have. And the reason hydration does so well is oftentimes after you drink coffee, dehydration
hmm.
is actually like just a factor that happens. And so Hydrate, which is their one of their best sellers, is is almost like a stack with coffee, which I've never seen done, right? Anyone who sells coffee never sells the idea of what can happen to you afterwards. And so here's like its, supplement to it. And I just love that. Like I fell in love with that concept because we can draw on that so much more. Like tired of the coffee crash, like take this supplement, or tired of like that dehydration, here's hydrate. So there's so many angles that coffee or cardio can open up that I think haven't been touched, which is another big upside given our supplement background. Can like I think we can tie it well.
Yeah, I think that's it. It's an interesting take on the hydration. I mean, I saw that when I looked at the brand when that announcement happened. I was like, oh, I didn't realize that they also had this. I
Yeah.
mean, I think I don't know the previous owners, but knew that they came from the background of kind of fitness and even I think competing or doing fitness programs. So like I understood why that product or supplements as a whole was like interesting because it's like a natural extension to their lifestyle. But then I didn't realize that it was such a, I guess, proportion of their sales because I just assumed that's, it's an add-on or it was a passion, personal product they wanted or whatever that was. And they had the means to do it. But it's good to see that. And I think that what you just mentioned, it is interesting because I don't think anybody's really done that. I mean, obviously there's like, like the Nestle's and stuff that own water companies and own coffee companies, but like, you don't see them going and like, let's put these things together and
Yep.
let's counteract them. It's like, they're just independently like, let's sell you
Independent.
some dehydration and then we got you some waters over here as well.
Yep. Yep. That's so true.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I just love the positioning.
Now, last kind of question I have for you, and this is, I guess you kind of mentioned at the beginning, like, if a perfect situation kind of falls in your lap, you're going to take it and run with it. But are you going to let, I guess, Ankit run free and build things, or are you just going to maybe acquire a few things? Like, is he like, I'm sure he's going to be able to get his hands on it and like do something unique with it. But like, was he also a little bit like, guys, I could have built something?
Yeah, yeah, no, great question. It's actually a really good question because it's come up. Um, when we started building Power Rangers, it's exactly that concept, which was like, hey, we can build something. Okay, here's the truth about Power Rangers. Um, it has been a start and stop pony since we started it. Okay, it is literally the abandoned child. It's the orphan kid. It is literally like, oh, we got a few minutes today. Cool. Maybe we should talk about Power Rangers. The sad part is that the potential of that brand is pretty immense because there's so much play on character and positioning that we can do. Power the superhero that's your best friend. Like that whole concept can be so strong, but because we built it, the burden for it to be something that we work on is very low because it's like, oh, you know what? We'll get to it. We'll get to it. We know what to do here. We know what to do here. Whereas when we acquired this, we've been in like a frantic of like, we got to learn operations, finance, this, that. How does this happen? How do we renew the licensing deal? How do we get our subscription orders out in time? Like every element of the business is a headache, which means that it's going to stay on top of mind, which means you're going to put time into it. So I think building things um, is obviously on a unit economic standpoint and every other standpoint on a financial piece is probably way better. But buying things is far more, um, I think, far more likely to succeed in our domain because of how we kind of behave and perform with things that are ours, the things that's ours versus things that we own. Like even our chew on this grew so much because we know our sponsors need a certain level of
Mm.
execution or they're not going to sponsor us. So it's like, okay, we got to do this. We got to do this. Coffee or cardio, like, holy shit, this is a brand. We can't let it tear down. Power Rangers, it's a baby, we get to it. So I think that's how we've kind of talked about it. And we're like, let's be real. Like we're clearly not able to give things that we build the time. So maybe the acquisition channel will get us to be like, hey, we have to at least maintain this. Otherwise, that's kind of embarrassing.
Now that you said that, you're going to get just a bunch of people sending you offer like, hey, you want to buy our business? You wanna, like all the other like shreds people that you forgot,
Yeah.
they're all going to just start sending you offers of like brands they built that are just
Yeah.
like out there. So good luck with that. I hope you
Yeah.
guys have the available capital, because now all of a sudden you're
Well,
going to have like so much deal flow you're not going to know what to do.
we'll cut this episode 2 minutes before this part.
Yeah. You're like, we can't leak that out. We can't put that out there.
No, I think it's such a cool market. I think it's such a cool market right now where like I don't know if you even saw what like happening with Gap and Macy's. Like
Hmm.
they collaborated on like a store within store concept and like just like trying to like join forces, which is conceptually what I think is going to happen more and more. And I don't even look at this as like acquisition only. I think it's like someone got it to a certain point. Now someone else can come in and do it, but it doesn't have to be a VC or private equity.
Yeah.
I think a brand can become the new age VC for another brand. And I think it'd be cool to see that unfold.
Yeah. It'd be cool to see some like, smaller functional kind of portfolios, like the new age craft, the new age, post is like this idea of like, let's acquire a bunch of like complementary functional or wherever brands that just kind of fit together, that are like unique. And we don't need to be these massive corporations or whatever, but we can,
Yeah,
get to these numbers by putting together these like kind of cool, unique partnerships, brand friends, things that just like naturally are within the same Venn diagrams. And you're like, we can all put this stuff and work together. Like they're all going in a parallel direction. We just have to get them to go, and if you put them in a scale in a kind of that way of synergistic way, it's like it works out. Well, I hope you enjoyed this YouTube video. If you did, consider hitting the like button to support me. Also, help me get to my new short term goal of 3,000 subscribers by hitting that subscribe button. I'd love to see you join me on this journey, but we need to fix the fact that basically 80% of you that are watching this YouTube video right now are not subscribed to my channel, and that makes me extremely sad. But do want to thank you for tuning in, and I'll see you in the next one.